Okay, in the previous section, we graphed lines and really got a good feel for that, hopefully. So, but now we're gonna look at more of an abstract approach to lines. And what I kind of mean by that is we're not going to have a graph to look at. So, looking at the graph a lot of times can give you a little better understanding, but here it's going to be more about the algebra, crunching numbers and plugging stuff in. So what we're going to do here is we want to find the equation of a line when we're given information. So specifically if you're given slope and a point, or maybe instead you're just given 2 points. So we have our slope form of an equation of a line right here. We call it the point slope form. And this is only good for non-vertical lines. So the undefined, if you have an undefined slope, then you kind of have to think a little bit outside the box, and we'll deal with that when that happens. So if you're given the slope m, okay, remember we use m for slope, that passes through a point, we're going to call it x1, y1, right? This is the formula we're going to use right here. And so what you're going to plug in here is you're going to plug in whatever value you have for y1 is going to go right here. So y minus, and then whatever that y1 value is. So the y right here will just be y, whatever that is. It is just y, and it'll stay that way. Then right here we have equals m, and so then whatever your slope is, we'll plug that in right there. And then parentheses x minus x sub 1. So you plug in your x sub 1, and then once again your x is just x in this case. Don't mess with that. And so you might be thinking, well, where does this formula come from? Well, actually, it's actually just the slope formula kind of manipulated. So if you remember, the slope formula was what? Y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And so if you were to multiply both sides right here by that denominator, you'd have m times x2 minus x1, and then that would be equal to y2 minus y1. So it is a little different as far as the subscripts go, but it's really the same formula, just manipulated, where you would multiply both sides by the denominator over here, and so it shows up with the m value on the other side. So, okay, so it's going to take a couple of these to kind of get the hang of it. The hardest part is when we have to deal with fractions, okay? And we'll review all that when we get there. So directions. First, we're going to label the given point, x1, y1. Next, we want to go ahead and substitute those values in m, x1, and y1 into the point slope form of the equation. Simplify if needed. So part of the formula is that minus right there, y minus, x minus. And so sometimes what's going to happen is you'll get double negatives. And so you want to go ahead and simplify that. And so we'll see a couple of those cases in a minute. Then we want to transform the point slope form into slope intercept form. That's our favorite form. So slope intercept form is when we have y equals mx plus b. That's our favorite form because you can derive a lot of information from that. You'll know the slope right away, the y-intercept right away, to where if you did have to graph the line, you have all the information. So we really like slope intercept form. So when you're doing your homework or an exam, I will ask you to leave the equation in slope intercept form. And so let's see, so to transform it from point slope to slope intercept form, we're going to have to distribute the slope value and then isolate the y variable. So that might not make too much sense until we actually work a problem. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's come down here. So what I like to tell students, especially when this is kind of new to you, go ahead and rewrite the formula. So the formula is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And then now what we're going to do is substitute our values in, our x1, y1, and then m is already, our slope is already labeled right here. So we're going to have y minus, so that minus is part of the formula, and then this is, I'm plugging in -3 for the y1 right here. So y1, I'm plugging that in, equals, then my slope is -3, parentheses, x is x, then minus x1, which in this case is a 2. Okay, so plug it in, and then now I'm going to look and see if I can simplify it all. And so you look for the double negatives. And so I have double negatives right here. I have y minus -3, So that will become y plus 3 equals negative 3 times x minus 2. So I'm done with that first step up here. So I'm going to come down a little bit. And so then the next part says to transform from point slope form into slope intercept form, we're going to distribute. Now, by the way, some of your homework questions will ask you for the point slope form first. So you might have to put this as your answer for part A. Okay, so for part A, you might have to put this in. And then part B will be asking you to go ahead and put it in slope intercept form. So I should go ahead and mention that because I know that that's something that confuses students on the homework sometimes. So you might have to break it up into 2 parts on your homework. Okay, so part B is we do want to have it in slope intercept form, so I'm going to go ahead and distribute. So then we're going to have y plus 3 equals negative 3x, and then negative 3 times a minus 2. So I'm multiplying a negative by a minus, so that's double negative, so that'll become plus 6. And then the last part, we're going to go ahead and isolate the y by subtracting by 3 on both sides, so that cancels out. So we're going to have y equals negative 3x plus 3. And that is my answer. And so that would be your part B. So hopefully I didn't confuse you. You'll see what I'm talking about when you start doing your homework. It'll say give the point slope form. And so they'll want this part like where it's simplified, right? And then part B, they'll say, okay, now go ahead and put it in slope intercept form. And this is it. And we could check it if you want. So if you were to let x equal 2, if we were to plug in 2 right here, we'd have y equals negative 3 times 2 plus 3. And so let's see, negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. Negative 6 plus 3 would give you a negative 3, which is what we're supposed to get for the y value. So when I let x equal 2, the y value simplified into negative 3, it obviously has a slope of negative 3, right? So those were the conditions that were given for the line. They wanted me to come up with a line where we have a slope of negative 3, and then it also passes through that point. And so I checked it by letting x equal 2, and then I went ahead and simplified it to verify it. Okay, looking at our next one, once again, I'm going to go ahead and write down the point slope formula. And then now what I need to do is go ahead and list my x1, y1. And then now I need to go ahead and substitute the values in. So I'm going to have y minus 3 equals 1/2 times x minus negative 2. So I do have double negatives right here, so I will go ahead and fix that. So y minus 3 equals 1/2 times x plus 2. Okay, and then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute the 1/2 right there. So let's see, we're going to have y minus 3 equals, so 1/2 times x, x has an understood 1 in front, so 1/2 times 1 is just going to stay 1/2, and then I have the x with it, and then 1/2 times a positive 2, so basically half of 2, which would be a 1. Okay, and then the last step we're going to do is isolate the y by adding 3 to both sides. So we're going to get y equals 1/2 x plus 4. And there we go. So the conditions were to have a slope of 1/2, and then if x equals negative 2, y would equal 3. And if you want to plug it in, you'll see that that's the case. Okay, so we'll try a couple more, and they you know, make sure you got these down because it's going to get more challenging. We're going to have to deal with some fractions in a moment. And I'm not talking about like that 1/2. It'll get a little bit more challenging. Number 3 should not be too bad. We have a slope of 0, so hopefully you can picture in your mind what that's going to look like. So this is one of our special cases. So let's see, x1, y1. And I'm going to go ahead and write the formula down. And start substituting my values in. So y minus negative 2 equals 0 times x minus negative 3. And so I have double negatives in 2 spots. So we'll go ahead and clean that up. So y plus 2 equals 0 times x plus 3. Okay, so that's my point slope. Now I want to convert it to slope-intercept form. So I'm going to distribute the 0, which is just going to cancel everything out, because 0 times anything, it turns everything into 0 on that side. So I end up with y plus 2 equals, y plus 2 equals 0. Okay, and then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and subtract 2 from both sides. So I get y equals negative 2, and that's my answer. And like I said, if you could kind of picture this in your mind, it goes through the point negative 3, negative 2, which is about right there, right? Back 3, down 2, something like that. And so it's just this line going across right here. It has a 0 slope. And so, yeah, the y value is negative 2 at all the points on the line. That's what we have going on there. All right, our next one will be a little bit more challenging. We're going to have to kind of deal with some of those fractions I was talking about. So let me see. Let me scroll back up. So let's see, x1, y1. I'll go ahead and write down our formula. And let's see, so I'm going to substitute these values in. So y minus 3 equals 1/2 times x minus 3. This time, I don't have any double negatives. Well, that's nice. But my next step will be to distribute the slope. Now, what's different here is when I do 1/2 times 3, it doesn't come out as nice as it did on my other problem. And so a lot of students are like, well, can I do a decimal? I prefer not to, because sometimes those decimals will not be very nice. This one would be okay, but you know, I made this first one kind of easy because they're going to get more challenging. And so we want to just go ahead and work with fractions instead. Now, what I want you to remember about fractions is if you have a over b times c over d, you can just multiply going across, right? A times c and b times d. So we'll want to keep that in mind here. So let's see, on the left side, I still have y minus 3, but on the right side, 1/2 times x, that's just going to be 1/2 x. Now, what I want to do with this minus 3 is I'm going to put it over 1. It's personal preference. And the reason why is that now I can kind of follow this formula up here. I can do 1 times minus 3, so it's going to stay minus because it's a positive and a negative, right? So we're going to keep it as a minus, and it'll be 3 over, and then 2 times 1 is 2. And like I said, this first one's not too bad, but they are going to get a little bit more challenging as we work through these. And so I followed that formula up here. I just multiplied the numerators and the denominators. Now here's the most challenging part of these questions, is I need to isolate y. So I'm going to go ahead and add 3 to both sides. Okay, so that cancels out. Let me give myself a little bit more space without the watermark. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so now I have y equals 1/2 x minus 3 over 2. Now, if you remember, and you can go back to some of our old lessons, the only way we can add or subtract is if we have common denominators. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this 3 right here. I added 3 to both sides. I'm going to change that into a plus 6 over 2. 6 divided by 2 is the same thing as 3. It's the same thing. What I'm basically doing is I'm multiplying the top and bottom by 2. So I can get that common denominator. So that 3, that plus 3, turns into a 6 over 2. And the reason why I did that is so that now I can combine these right here. Now you have to be careful. Okay, I am adding them, but the first value is a minus. So it's going to be a minus 3 plus 6. Okay, or negative 3 plus 6, basically. So they have different signs, so you want to take the difference and then keep the sign of the larger number, which is 6, right? 6 is larger than 3. So let me write down my answer, and then let's make sure we got this. So negative 3 plus 6 becomes 3, and it's going to stay positive because the larger number is positive. So we should end up with positive 3 over my common denominator, which is 2. And so that was my answer right there. And like I said, this is The part that is going to make you stumble sometimes, and so you just have to be careful. Okay, you got to be patient. You're going to have to work, 7, 8 of these examples until you feel really comfortable with it. So don't, it's not easy. So don't feel like if you're not getting it right away, it's just going to take some practice, and we're going to get plenty of practice. I got 2 more right here. Okay. All right. So we'll do 2 more, and then I'll have a second video for the last part. Okay, so once again, we'll go ahead and label this, and I'll write down the formula. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And so this is just really good. It really gets us good at our algebra, especially with fractions, because that's something we all struggle with. Okay, so let's see. Y1 is going to be -8 equals, so my slope is -6/5. I like to put the negative directly with the 6, personal preference. So I'll always typically do that. And then let's see, x minus, -7. So I do have some double negatives going on that I want to go ahead and clean up. So we'll go ahead and do that. So y plus 8 equals -6/5 times x plus 7. Okay. Now, just like the other one, I'm going to go ahead and distribute here, and I'm going to put that 7/1 so I can kind of just multiply the numerators and the denominators together. Okay, so I'm still left with x plus 8 over here equals, when I multiply the slope with the x, it'll always you just put that in front of the x. That's not going to change. Now here, I'm multiplying a negative times a plus. So that will change it to a minus because I have a negative times a positive. Negative times a positive. So it's going to become a minus. And then let's see, 6 times 7 is 42. And then 5 times 1 is 5. Okay? So I was multiplying a negative to a value that was addition. So you kind of think of it as a positive and the negative. Positive plus 7, -6/5. So my result becomes a minus 42/5. Okay, now the most challenging part is going to be, let's see, we're going to subtract 8 from both sides, right? And I'm going to have to scroll down. We'll come back up for that other problem in a minute. So this cancels out. So we're going to have y equals -6/5x minus 42/5. Now I got to get a common denominator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply that -8 by a 5/5 so that I can have the same denominator. So basically I look at this, whatever this denominator is, that's what I'm going to multiply the top and bottom by. So I'm going to get a -40/5. That's what the -8 turns into right there. That's where this comes from. I'm multiplying by 5/5. Now, what you'll notice about this one, we have our common denominator, right? You'll notice that they're both being subtracted. So you have basically a -42 minus 40. So they're going to team up together. So 42 is going to team up, with 40. So 42 plus 40 is 82. So it's going to be a -82/5 right there. So our final result is y equals -6/5x minus 82/5. And that is our answer right there. Okay? So, like I said, it's not easy. It's going to take practice. And it's good for you, though, because it's really going to help you out the rest of the semester. So anytime we run into fractions, which is fairly often, you'll feel more comfortable with it. Okay? All right. So let's go ahead and go back up here, and we'll try our last one for this first video. So let's go ahead and label this. And I'll write out my formula. All right, so let's see. Y minus -1 equals -3/4 times x minus 6. Okay, so So we'll go ahead and change this to y plus 1 equals negative 3 over 4 times x minus 6. And so now it's time to distribute that m value. And so this one will be, there's a couple different ways you can approach this. So let me go ahead and do this and we can talk about it. So y plus 1 equals negative 3 over 4x. Now I have double negatives here actually. I have a negative 3 over 4 times a minus 6. So that's actually going to become plus 18 over 4. Now I could continue the problem along if I want, not really a big deal. But if you notice that you can simplify this value here, it won't happen that often, but might happen every once in a while. If you notice 18 over 4, I can go ahead and reduce that right there. 18 divided by 4, those are both divisible by 2. So I'm going to go ahead and simplify that a little bit. So y plus 1 equals negative 3 over 4x plus 9 over 2. Like I said, it won't happen that often, but you might see one in your homework that might be able to do that. And if I didn't simplify it, it doesn't mean I'd get it wrong. I would have to go ahead and still subtract the 1 from both sides, but you would definitely want to simplify before you get to your final answer. Okay? But it's always best to simplify as early on as possible. It'll just make the numbers a little bit smaller that you have to work with. So now I'm going to go ahead and subtract 1 from both sides. Give myself some space. And so that cancels out. Y equals negative 3 over 4x plus 9 over 2. And then I'm going to go ahead and change that. I'm going to multiply that by 2 over 2 so that I can change that to a minus 2 over 2, right? 2 divided by 2 is still 1. So now I've got that common denominator, though. And so I want to go ahead and combine these. And so once again, you got to look at the signs associated with the numerators. So I have a plus 9 and a minus 2. So they're different. They're competing against each other. So what I'm going to do here is I want to subtract the smaller from the larger, which should give me a 7. Now the larger number was positive, so I'm going to keep that positive. So my final answer should be y equals negative 3 over 4x. And then, let's see, that'll be plus, it'll be positive, 7 over 2. All right, and there we go. Okay, so I think this will probably be a good stopping point. I do have more examples where we kind of look at it a little differently, where we're not given the slope. Instead, we're just given 2 points. So there's just a little extra step involved, but it's pretty much identical to what we have been doing.